Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalkpot. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And boy, do we have a doozy today, folks. We're talking about episode 280, Gone.
It's what happens when Dylan pulls the lever. I'm gone.
He's gone.
Oh, what a lovely...
Yeah.
I mean, this is so much.
Uh-huh.
And also not enough, to a certain extent. We'll get into it. But right off the top, I do want to say, did the music interludes feel really long?
They definitely rode the music harder than they sometimes do, but I didn't think about the interludes themselves being that long, no.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just me listening to it or whatever and my short attention span, but it felt like they were really trying to pad the...
Andrew has a short attention span.
Yeah. In a stunning turn of events, Andrew got bored listening to something for more than 7 seconds. Oh, my goodness.
TikTok was invented for him, folks.
Yes, it was. And Vine, too. Looks at my track record. It's very promising.
It's incredible that he does a podcast.
Yeah.
The anti-Vine.
It's true.
Anyways,
This episode about John Avery Whitaker leaving Odyssey.
Yeah, the episode that finally grapples with the fact that the actor who played Whit has died.
Yeah.
So we talked about it kind of at the start, which was like, okay, they needed to figure out what they were doing, and so they sent Bernard and Eugene on a road trip as a way to like stall for time, allow them to figure out how they were going to
Figure out.
Right.
Wit.
Right. What they
are we
were going to
gonna
do with John Avery Whitaker now that now that Hal Smith had passed. And so they eventually land on, okay, we're not going to have him die. Have the character of Whit die.
Yeah.
And they didn't have anyone they could immediately recast him with. So they set up the premise of this episode, which is, okay, while they're gone, Whit gets like an offer he can't refuse, and he leaves.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily an offer he can't refuse. He just gets an excellent opportunity to do something he hasn't done before in a field that he's interested in.
How is that not an offer he can't refuse?
That's fair. I don't know. The offer word, and especially the can't refuse bit, like, it makes it seem a bit more transactional and like he was being purchased.
I don't think that that's how I typically read an offer they can't refuse, but maybe.
I don't know. Maybe I've watched too many mob movies. That's why I read so much aggression and hostility into that.
But yeah, so they decide, okay, we can move him away from Odyssey, which is a crazy thing to do because he's the center of Odyssey. So they decide to do that and bring Bernard and Eugene in like right after he has left. And they do some clever editing in this episode to use Hal Smith's voice. These are all lines that had been recorded for previous episodes.
Okay, wow. I did have that question because there's a lot of like relatively specific terms and such used that feel like it. There's moments where it feels very cobbled together, and then there are moments where I was deeply questioning, like, did they get in like a Hal Smith impersonator? Is that what they did?
Nope. So Dave Arnold was the sound designer on this episode, and he's got a really good bit here where he talks about this episode and just how that was. He talks about it as the most difficult show he ever produced, both physically and emotionally draining.
Wow.
Like he wanted to do it as a labor of love for Hal Smith.
Yeah, of course.
And they wanted to have Whit in the show.
Yeah.
And so this episode's written and directed by Paul McCusker.
Lovely.
And he wrote the script out using as minimal dialogue for like keeping Whit in the tiniest bit possible, but having
it all be about Whit.
Correct.
You know,
Doing a script that's about Whit, but keeping him in as little as possible. I think it has a very, this is going to be a crass comparison, but Rogue One, what they do with Tarkin in that.
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
like you can see the versions of that script where Tarkin didn't appear at all.
Yeah.
Or where he only appeared in hologram. And then the version that they landed on where they like digitally recreated him and had a voice actor do an imitation.
Yeah.
Which is not what they're doing here. But
Yeah.
you can see like the scaffolding of let's have Wit involved as little as possible.
Yes.
Let's like have Will Ryan read a letter from Wit,
Exactly.
and then can we do anything more? And so McCusker like wrote some lines where he was like roughly like, this is what I'm going for, and then Dave Arnold went back through hundreds of old episodes, both from the
we're at 280
right. So both the episodes that as they aired, but also just scratch tape they had. Hey, do we have anything that is do we have stuff from the sessions that didn't make it in? Do we have B-sides? Do we have whatever?
Yeah, that was there were words from when he's talking about the pillows and when he's on the plane. I was like, that's so specific, but it sounded kind of canned. But I could not, for the life of me, place where it came from. And that's why I thought it was an impersonator.
Right. No. So, like, yeah, it is. So they do that thing where because they have people interact with the scripts as they exist. And there's a good article on the wiki that tries to, they call them foreign lines. And this happens a couple times throughout the show. Where they're like using old lines for actors. During Will Ryan's hiatus, we talked about some of this because they do, because we get some of that in Novacom with Will Ryan. We also talked about it in The Time Has Come, the Eugene Becomes a Christian episode, because they have Wit leave a voicemail and it's all reused Hal Smith audio. Yeah. And so they're doing it here. And so like the pillow stuff is from episode 213, Best Intentions. As is the What Book Should I Start With Next is also from that episode. And there's a whole article that kind of outlines all of the different spots they pulled his audio from.
That's so cool.
But yeah, so they really...
And you got to think this is pre-digital, right? So all of this is hand-clipped and cut, right?
This was actually the first episode they produced digitally.
Oh, all right. Well,
I mean, all of the
problem
all
there.
the old tapes are, I am assuming, being re-recorded onto digital as they're going through this. But like, yeah, this is the first time that they pieced it together using a computer.
Wow.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Given the scope of it and given like when we are in the history of the show. Like, it's like, oh, we're now at a point where we could technologically do that, and this episode really needs it. Although, I wouldn't I imagine this was difficult for Dave Arnold, because, you never want to, the first time you're using a piece of technology, for it to be
a product you have
correct. And one that is this vital to the show.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
And so this episode aired September 3rd of 94, which is a week after the previous one. So they had taken a hiatus earlier in the year, but at this point we're going week to week with episodes, having already had this one in the can. But this is originally aired September 3rd of 94. The Hal Smith had passed away the end of January, so we're about 8 months out from that. And during that time, they've been doing episodes where, like, scripts that already existed, where they replaced Wit, doing a lot of, like, writing Wit out of scenes, or referencing him off camera. They also take a break during this time, and then we, like, finally come back with the road trip, and end the road trip with this. So this has been obviously a huge undertaking for everyone involved. Like, this is something that they really needed to get right, not just because it was so crucial to the show, but because they cared for Hal Smith.
Yeah, of course. He was integral to the identity of the show. Like, there is no Odyssey as we know it if there was not Hal Smith first.
Yeah, there's a bit in the official guide from Katie Lee where she writes saying that she was very sad when Hal died, and that it was hard for her to work on the show and play Connie. He always recorded at the mic that was right across from her.
Yeah.
When they were doing recordings in the room, and out of respect, that microphone was left empty after his death. But she was just like, that was so hard.
Yeah.
To like have to record across from like this memorial to
Hal Smith.
Right.
Yeah.
And then says that she was so happy when they started letting people use that mic again.
Mm-hmm. Was it, did Paul Herlinger then replace it? Does it say anything about that? Or
the mic was reused before Herlinger came back. It
okay.
wasn't just standing there in memorial that whole time. That would almost be weirder.
Yeah.
But yeah, they eventually started just letting people use that mic again. And and yeah, it is.
But still, I guess I haven't really thought about it. That must have been so hard for a young Katie Lee to play the same character and have the same ongoing relationship with two different human beings representing the same person.
Oh, you're saying later when Herlinger comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair. She definitely, I mean,
I would just be curious to explore more of the feelings that were dredged up in that experience. Because, it's relatively unique within shows that they have, an actor die and they don't write off the character.
Right. No, that is very fair. And to have someone who you're... Right. I mean, them, Will Ryan, Walker Edmonston were there from day one. I mean, that's Odyssey. But for what it's worth... Katie Lee is in her like late 30s at this point in the show.
Okay,
that's so fair. It's not like she's not Connie's
21.
age dealing with this.
Yeah,
but
and the show's been around for a handful of years at this point.
Correct. Which means I mean they're coworkers. Like they've been doing this together for a while, and that would not be would be tough on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just there's a whole lot that goes into this episode that is just really well executed, both from a literal production sense and also from the emotions and the writing and the everything that's going into this, the performances. The other thing we should talk about here is that this is our first episode with Jack Allen.
Darn straight it is. I'm sure I've heard this episode before. I'm familiar with what happens to a certain extent. I don't remember anything about the part 2, which we didn't really say off the top, but as this is coming
it's kind of a part 2. I mean, it's the episodes are called Gone but Not Forgotten.
Yeah.
But they're not. It's kind of like the Katrina episode we covered earlier.
Yeah.
It began with Rabbit's Foot, it ended with a handshake, where
exactly.
It's like these are paired together.
Yeah.
But they're not like dependent on each other in quite the same way.
Yeah, this does feel like a self-contained episode in a way that like First House on the Left or Fifth House on the Left doesn't.
Correct. Like that ends on a cliffhanger. This ends on a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got Alan Young coming in to play Jack Allen. Jack Allen is named after Alan Young, and Jack being the nickname for C.S. Lewis that he preferred people call him during an era where you could just be called Jack.
Lovely.
Like Jack just seems like it was a generic nickname for a long time.
Hey, Jack.
Right, you also get the thing of Jack is a common nickname for John, and we've got John Avery Whittaker, obviously. So
Yeah.
now we've got Jack Allen. And so he comes into this episode. He is Whit's childhood friend. And finally has an appearance here. And we've probably done greater context on Alan Young in the past, but he's most famous for playing Wilbur on Mr. Ed, the classic talking horse show.
Yeah.
And he played a
horse, of course.
a main character on that show. He's not the titular Mr. Ed, but you know, he is a noteworthy character, and has just been a fantastic voice actor through all time. I mean, before his passing in 2016, played a whole bunch of things, including probably most famously Scrooge McDuck in all the DuckTales stuff, which, you know, great theme song
about that before,
and whatnot. Yeah, it is just...
Yeah, no, and it's very cool, I will say, just in this era of the show, that they're able to replace a heavy hitter like Hal Smith with somebody like Alan Young, who has a voice that's familiar, who, in the similar way that Hal Smith was Owl, like, and was on the Andy Griffith show. You know, it's a familiar character. This is somebody that this generation or the generation above them will know to a certain extent, and if they don't, it's not particularly offensive.
Right, but it feels like they're pulling another guy who's like cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, it makes a lot of sense. And there's a good quote for Alan Young where he says, they told me that they weren't replacing Hal because you couldn't replace him, but they were looking for someone who might have the same feel that Hal had, and they thought I might have that feel.
That's very sweet.
Which just, it just sums up what they're doing with Jack.
Yeah.
They need, like, a grandpa in Odyssey, and
they need a patriarch.
And they talk in the official guide about the fact that, like, they thought about trying to make that Tom, which I think would have been maybe a more obvious choice.
Yeah,
you've got someone who's been here since the beginning. Walker Edmondson's fantastic. Tom's a good character. Like, it would have been having him run Wits End. Having him run Wits End while Wit is gone would just make sense, especially this is pre-Timothy Center.
He's got a lot less going on.
Like, give Tom something to do.
He hasn't even run for mayor at this
point? That's coming. That's coming very soon. But we won't be talking about it because we already did. but
I would be remiss to not mention another legendary member of the voice actor community, Randy Crenshaw.
Right, yeah.
Back again.
We talked about literally last episode. And he is here playing the security guard at the airport later on in the episode. But yeah. And we've got Corey Burton on the radio. Like, it's a kind of, normal
standard,
normal cast.
No, I just thought it was funny because Randy Crenshaw was on the last episode as a firefighter.
Right. Well, and Maureen Davis was on the last episode as well, and is on this one again, playing the oh gosh, who does she play on this one? She is the like flight attendant, or no, not the flight attendant, the airport announcer. But coming back after doing two with them. So they were just kind of rolling with
in the studio and stuff.
But okay.
Well, you ready to jump in? We got a promo for this?
Oh shoot, I didn't even think. Wow, I'm really curious to see what this promo is.
Yeah, actually.
Saying goodbye is never easy, as Eugene learns on the next Adventure in Odyssey. When he and Bernard return from their road trip, they discover they've just missed someone very special. Eugene's determined dash to the airport won't stop for traffic jams, misdirected shortcuts, or even security. Don't miss this heartfelt episode next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
Why does it sound like Western music?
A bad decision.
What?
That was a bad decision.
Homeward Bound. Wits leaving Odyssey. Wow. Okay.
Does Homeward Bound have Western music in it?
Isn't that the movie about the cows
Nope.
in the West? What am I thinking of?
Home on the Range?
Home on the Range.
Homeward Bound is about the dogs.
Oh,
and
yes.
the cat.
Yes, that it's like live action or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Following the success of Babe.
Yeah.
I love me some Homeward Bound.
Yeah, no, I really actually remember having a lot of affection for that.
But anyways, the music, the
Why?
choice, that promo does not hit the tone that this episode hits.
No.
But I guess you don't sell the episode on the tone? I don't know.
No, but I was surprised.
I'm glad
with
they didn't
how...
spoil Wit's departure in the promo. They do spoil it in the teaser for this episode, which is really freaking annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that we both hear Hal Smith, so we know that surprise is there.
Yeah.
And it also, so here's a thing that I think is really interesting. After this episode aired, Focus on the Family put out releases in both their magazine and in Clubhouse magazine addressing Hal Smith's death, which had occurred 8 months prior, but because it was 94, people just didn't know.
Yeah, that is
What
actually...
a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, man.
It is just... Yeah, I was reading that in the guide, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right. I guess that's not making national newspapers. Mm-hmm. So how would people know? Mm-hmm. Until, right.
Yeah, well,
Like...
it's not like they had a website that they could put up
Right.
a little
No,
blast
this is
on.
pre the internet.
Yeah, this is...
Like...
Yeah.
Or the World Wide Web.
Certainly.
But...
www.
Yeah. What a wild thing
Choice
to think about. But-
Yeah, no, it makes sense though that they would put it out in both magazines.
Yeah, but
you know.
once again, following this episode.
Yeah.
Like, not 8 months ago when it occurred.
No.
Like, they were just, like, living in this world.
Alone.
Like, right.
Basically.
Yeah, it's... Yeah.
Without the audience. The audience couldn't really mourn until, after this episode came out?
Yeah. After this episode and the next came out is when they actually published something addressing it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it maybe made some news that, like, on the day he died, actor of yada yada.
Sure.
Yeah. Passes.
Yes.
But it's not going to be directly tied to Odyssey. It's not going to be directly tied to anything.
Right, it doesn't spread like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there's no social media to, like, clip out the 10 seconds of the newscast where they're talking about it to spread, Yeah.
Yeah.
Strange. I think I might have a greater appreciation for delayed gratification if I didn't grow up with the internet. This is something that is not a revelation, but an unfortunate reality.
Anyway, the episode itself, I feel like we're finally
we've
into
just
the point where we can
the living heck out this bush.
We are like 30 minutes into this episode,
Yes.
and we haven't even talked about the episode. But
But we also
whatever.
have.
That's what you're here for, guys. Like, if you're not, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean to let you down. Give me some notes.
But yeah.
I'll try to be better.
So Bernard and Eugene are arriving back in Odyssey after a 34-day trip.
Yeah.
To California and back. Mm-hmm. And when they come in, they see all these banners, and like it's so like the whole town is decked out. Town Hall looks like when President Eisenhower came to town, which Bernard remembers.
Of course he does.
Because he is old.
Yeah.
And never left Odyssey, which we established previously in this arc. There's a goodbye and God bless banner. Mm-hmm. And they finally get to Wit's End, and they're like, well, we'll go to Wit's End. Wit's End is where they always, like, Whit'll know what's going on.
Yeah.
He always knows what's going on. And Connie's in there, and...
Yeah, they, like, basically pull up to park, and then Connie bolts out.
Right, it's just like, whoa, guys, you're here? Like,
Yeah.
we've been trying so hard to get a hold of you. The
Which, again, another crazy thing of, like, pre-cell phone. Right. There was no way that they, like...
Right. She's like, you didn't leave us any way to contact you.
Yeah.
He was like, well, Maud had ways to contact me. They were like... And Connie's like, Maud's away, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one knew where you were. You should have left something because, like, you know, he left while you were gone. And, like, you weren't here for it. And
yeah.
They're like, who left? What are you saying? And she delivers, Wit. He left Odyssey.
Yeah.
In just one of those line readings that is burned into my mind. And possibly not from this episode. This episode seemed more familiar than the previous ones on this arc. Mm-hmm. I'm not positive I had heard it. I think I had, but also a lot of this audio comes up later in the Eugene Return stuff that we covered.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's where I'm like, like it's hard to know what is my recollection versus what is like kind of clip showy recollection.
In episodes
because of course this is an episode they're gonna refer back to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Also, just quick question. When you have a going away party and stuff, do you typically just leave the decorations out and everybody leaves?
It happened an hour ago.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Like Wit left, or Tom took Wit to the airport an hour prior.
Yeah. That's actually absurd. Okay, so maybe it would be cleaned up then.
Yeah, so I'm guessing they just haven't taken down all the decorations yet. But yes, that is kind of a funny thing. But also, I don't know, maybe if you're trying to remember them, feels like something they do in Stars Hollow, like when they throw the going away party for Rory. Like, spoilers, I guess.
Not spoilers. So sorry.
Yeah, but we get the backstory here, which is that a man who we've never heard of before, who was Wit's mentor, was working in the Middle East for the Universal Press Foundation.
Dr. Kane.
Yeah.
Or something like it.
Yeah, and he passed away suddenly, and so they needed to replace him quickly, otherwise, like, they would basically lose their opportunity. Like, the relationships established with the community or whatever, it couldn't just sit vacant for a while. It's archaeology, so there's presumably governments involved. Like, there's a whole thing here. And so, like, Wit went to Chicago to meet with the Universal Press Foundation, which he's the chairman of, to try and find someone else to take that spot. And in doing so, kind of came to the realization that he's the person to take that spot.
Yeah. Which is fair. It does make sense. Wit is also very old. And wouldn't you be, like, replacing the problems of an old man with another old man?
Yeah, I think that I think that it makes sense as a short-term solution.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like, I think about, like, so often when there is, like, a vacancy, especially in, like, a pastoral position or something that's, like, a little bit, like, not necessarily, like, something corporate, but something that's more organizational, whatever. You tap someone who is a member of the congregation who is maybe retired or has
experience
has experience in this field to just be like, hey, can you be the person to fill in,
keep this ship afloat?
Like, you need someone to fill the gap as an interim, and it feels like maybe that's kind of the role Wit's playing here, wherein, like, this isn't going to be a permanent thing for him. They don't want to say that it's super temporary because they don't know how long till they're going to bring him back. But, or I guess potentially even if they're going to bring him back. Like, at this point, they could just leave him out there in perpetuity or have him pass away out there or whatever. They're still kind of in the treading water, buying time area. But they did it in a way that gives them the option to bring him back.
Definitely.
Which, if they had just had him die while they were gone, they wouldn't have had that chance.
True. Yeah, I almost wish that they had him die after this. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. We've talked about it a lot in the, like, boy, is it depressing that, like, that they have just done recasting twice now, that they can't actually let the character die. Like, the show feels like it is locked because of that decision. At this time, though,
I don't think that it was the wrong decision.
I get it.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my gosh. Well, and with Hurlinger,
because-
I feel like they proved that they were able to come back just as strong.
Yeah, right. And then it's like, well, let's just do it again. But
That always goes great.
But the other thing that's at play here is like, it hadn't really been a thing I realized until we were covering these episodes, because this isn't my native era of the show.
Mm-hmm.
How central Wit is up to this point. Like, Wit has always been the main character of Odyssey.
Yeah.
But following Hal Smith's passing, they do a lot of episodes that don't involve Wit at all. Mm-hmm. And you get Jack, you get Jason, you get a lot of, hey, this episode is centered around Eugene and Bernard. This episode is a like Wooten heavy episode. Yeah. This one's just Connie. Like you have that.
It almost forced them to do more world building.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Where up till this point, Hal Smith was so much the center, which I didn't really realize until covering this. Yeah. This year, but also just doing this podcast in general, but like how central he is to the show in the early days. The fact that every intro has Hal Smith up until his death is like remarkable, because my view of Odyssey is way more democratic and less centralized.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
and so, when you're in that situation, it makes an amount of sense to be like, we just letting him die isn't necessarily the correct play here.
Yeah.
You were gonna say something?
No.
Yeah. But the thing that's interesting there is they had, so the Mortal Coil was written originally as a way to have Wit die.
Yeah.
It was following the death of Hal Smith's wife, and his health had been deteriorating at that point. This is 2 years later that he finally passes, and it's suddenly, but also like not surprisingly.
Yeah. I mean, he's an older gentleman. If he had declining health, it's not rocket science to think that it could go downhill quickly.
And so they wrote an out, and then they decided not to use it and but use it in the show and keep his story going. And so then it feels like, well, when he does pass away and they don't have an out written, they should probably find a way to keep his story going. Yeah. And also, right, you have a man and a character who's so central to the show, and having that character die almost feels disrespectful to Hal Smith's legacy.
That's fair.
Like, I think ultimately, maybe it would have been the utmost respect to be like, no one else can ever be this man.
Yeah.
But in the moment, the impulse to be like, man, we just had to like lose a friend. Do we want to lose the character as well? Yeah,
no, for sure. Well, and like you said, Wit incredibly central, and I feel like at least what I've learned is, depending on what era you grew up in with Odyssey, you have different views of Wit and the show in general. Where, the people that are older than me that grew up with more of this and earlier episodes of the show do view Wit as like a much more central, perhaps like authoritarian type figure, because he is so dominant and like the main character early on. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. I find it very interesting, the line that they had to walk there. I can't say that they did the wrong thing by any means. It would have been interesting, and out of morbid curiosity, I would love to see an Adventures in Odyssey without Wit. But
yeah, and we do, and for what it's worth, we do get it for like a couple years.
Yeah.
Like all of the what I consider like the great stuff in Blackguard happens without Wit.
Yeah.
Like, it is, the show figures out really how to function in this space. And when they bring him back, spoiler alert, they do they do so in a way that is that doesn't just bring this man back and put him at the center of the world.
Yeah.
it's like he gets to come back and be a part of this world. And then I think the quote unquote reboot, your 51 forward, changes that dynamic yet again. But yeah,
worse.
Yeah,
It was a mistake.
yes, we agree. Odyssey could have ended at album 50.
Yeah. No, or it could have just gone
There's
on
a
with...
lot of stuff I enjoy post album 50.
There's so much that I enjoy
Green Ring's
post-album.
fun,
Yeah,
but like...
And the Buck stuff's cool, Jules stuff is cool. I like what they did with Eugene and Connie. It makes sense. It's just frustrating how central they have to keep Wit as opposed to during the Paul Herlinger era where they really actually kind of spread their wings and were able to build this, the Odyssey that... is the subject of so many podcasts today. This is where the characters get, it goes beyond the Barclays, where it's like the Barclays feels like one TV show, that era, your neighborhood kids. But when Paul Herlinger comes in, and especially in this time without him, Odyssey gets so much bigger,
Yeah. And so Wit has decided to go off to the Middle East. Connie mentions that he was inspired by something Eugene said about like going out and
broadening his horizons.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I love that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the idea that Eugene and this whole like kind of ridiculous road trip, whatever thing that he was going through here, like that Wit took that as inspiration, and it like this episode is a lot about the relationship between Eugene and Wit.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. Just the way that line really makes it clear that things go both ways.
Yeah. In a way that I don't know is really that firmly established previously.
Yeah. But it's so good. And so, Connie calls the airport and they find out that the flight is like gonna leave in 35 minutes because it has been delayed. Like it was supposed to leave in 15, it's been delayed 20, so they have to get there in 35 minutes. And Bernard and Eugene like jump into Bernard's new truck and they just
race down the highway.
Correct. And Will Ryan is doing an incredible performance here, like losing his mind. There's a part at which he says, "To who?" And Bernard says, "Whom?"
Yeah.
Which is just like a cute moment of like, wow, they've spent so much time together.
Yeah.
But it also just underlines this whole thing of like Eugene is like...
absolutely...
like this is...
distraught.
Like as a person who... he doesn't often let himself be run by his emotions.
Yeah.
This is him doing that.
Well, yeah,
because
he
him
feels...
just being like, I'm emotional.
Yeah.
This is bad. Like he just spent he spent a month away from his father figure, his mentor, whatever. Like, and came back, and now he's like, I have no idea when I will ever see this man again.
Yeah.
Like he is going across the globe and he is leaving now.
Yeah. Which is terrifying and very jarring. And I think that the analogy of losing Hal the way that they did is kind of pretty apt as far as what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get the whole like for as clunky as a lot of the road trip is, and where I don't like the road trip that much episode to episode, you can listen to our past 6 episodes of this show if you want that.
Dylan's wrong.
Yeah, no, I might be.
But there's plenty of episodes that I was like, I didn't like that.
But I think the broad strokes of that arc work, and the fact that that so much of it is establishing Eugene is Eugene coming to terms with Odyssey is my home, and really wanting to get back to that and being excited and turning down other opportunities so that he can return, and speaking affectionately of the place and whatever, to then get back, and the thing that like kind of makes it all work is no longer there.
Yeah, no, that's complete mental breakdown. And I think that, you're right. There's the show in this episode does a really good job of capturing that. Like Bernard, on their way critiques Eugene for stammering, and he doesn't even acknowledge it. Like, and it's funny and it makes sense, but it's so well performed. Like, he sounds so exasperated. There it is. It's fantastic. Yes. And Bernard's great. You know, he's providing that levity. I will say, I was surprised how chill he was with Whit leaving.
Yeah, but he's an older man.
Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
He's been, like, he has a relationship with Whit.
Yeah.
But he's not, like,
dependent on him.
Right, it's
for
not
his
as
identity.
close.
Yeah.
And he also has probably a better grasp on the fact that, like, Whit will return.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that, like, Eugene just can't see.
Yeah. Well, because... Yeah.
Yeah. Because he might not, like, because that's not a step. But I don't think Bernard sees this as finality in the same way that Eugene is kind of viewing it. And yeah, but Bernard does have a salient line where he says, like, maybe you don't need Whit as much as you think you do.
Yeah. Which is really beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And valuable, and it, I think...
And will set Eugene up for success coming forward here. But the other thing that's happening meanwhile while they're in the car is Connie's, like, talking to the people at the airport, like, trying to convince them to stop the plane. And she should have just called in a bomb threat.
Yeah.
I realize that this is,
a kid's show.
It's a kid's show. It's also the 90s.
Yeah.
So, like the hilarity of, like, Whit had left for the airport an hour prior. It's a
absurd.
30-minute drive.
Yeah.
And the plane was taking off an hour and 15 minutes. So, like, he had 45 minutes from, like, getting to the airport to getting on the flight to the Middle East.
Yeah.
And, like, that was just like, yeah, no sweat.
No sweat.
Like,
that's
right.
normal. That's how plane travel works.
Yep. Not the world I grew up in.
Certainly not.
And so it is just, it's funny, but I'm just like, obviously they didn't have that option, but that would have been, you want to get this plane grounded.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. I was like, I thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, Connie's going to, like, fake some sort of a medical emergency or something.
Right, just be like, my dad's about to take off and he doesn't have his pills.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. Or do something as crazy as what Eugene does later in the episode when he runs onto the tarmac.
Yeah, tarmac, that's the word.
Yeah, they kept calling it the restricted area.
Yeah, I really struggled to come up with that word in my notes.
Oh,
because I was like, runway's not what I mean.
No, it's.
I don't mean runway.
It's the bit where
the tarmac.
Yeah.
Wow. So smart, Andrew.
Sure.
So they get stuck in traffic because there's construction, and so Eugene gets out and runs, just takes off through a field, and who should pull up to him next in the field but Bart Rathbun?
Yes, of course. Bart Rathbun comes up, he's like, Eugene Meltzner, is that you? And pulls him aside, and this is when Eugene admits to being able to run a 6-minute mile, which is very fast.
Yes.
But
he's desperate.
Yeah. Well, no, he used to be able to. That's impressive.
Correct. He used to be able to. But yeah, and Bart's headed to the airport and also hates traffic, so he just cut through this field.
Yeah, which is incredible. He cut through I imagined he, like, cut through the divider on the highway by, like, taking one of those dirt roads that police officers sit in.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And we get this really nice scene between Whit and Tom, where Tom's, the one who dropped him off, and he's saying goodbye, and John Campbell's score just underlines it so perfectly.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wrote the note down of, like, oh man, am I gonna cry in this episode? Like, that was, like, really, like, I was, sitting at my desk at work, writing notes over my lunch break, just going like, oh man, is this one gonna get me? But then we jump away from that lovely moment for the antics of Eugene running through a restricted area and then waving at Whit on the plane. Yeah,
he jumps out of Bart's car, demands he stops, and runs up to a security guard, and he's like, oh, where's the gates? And he's like, oh, that's around front, basically on the other side. So, airports are typically, like, curved, and they have like two main ports of entry. So you can just cut across the middle where all the planes are. And so that's what Eugene does.
Yep. And this guy freaks out and calls it in, rightfully so. And yeah, and so
Can we talk about the goodbye between Tom and Whit?
oh sure, yeah, I glossed over it.
I mean, you didn't really gloss
hit
over
me with it.
So Tom's performance is incredible.
Oh yeah.
Like Tom's, Walker Edmondson killing it as far as his sincerity. You can hear so much emotion in his voice, and it's just brutal to hear the canned audio of Whit. I think in that moment, and it's good that it could still happen in that exchange, but as an adult listening to it, it just stands out to me like, how much better would his departure have been if Hal Smith was actually there for it?
Oh, sure.
Like if he could actually have, even if everything about the episode was the exact same and he was just able to perform these lines and provide all of this emotion to match what clearly all the voice actors are bringing to the table.
Yeah.
It makes it hard, but you're right in the sense that the score being drawn out and really holding the silence in between lines of dialogue between like people talking to Whit, just rips your heart out every single time. Like there's a part of me that in that silence wonders if Whit's actually going to speak because I know he's gone.
Yeah, and we hear an exchange on the plane where he, with the aforementioned pillow one, and he asks for a book, or he's trying to decide what he's going to read. And then out the window, Eugene is like running down the tarmac, waving at Whit.
Yeah.
And Whit like looks out and
what
sees
does he say? He's like,
I think he just says like, Eugene. Does he say something more?
No, I think he's like, well, I'll be darned. I mean, it's not that, but it's like something like that. Like,
I'm pulling it up. Give me one moment.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, he says, good grief.
Good grief. It's
Good
Eugene.
grief. Eugene.
Yeah. That sounded canned.
Yeah. But
no, it's great. And Eugene, like the Foley work of like the background noise of the airplane, and Eugene just desperately yelling, like, I just came to say goodbye. I just came to say goodbye. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, the fact that he was able to spot Whit through the window and Whit was able to spot him feels a bit improbable.
But so you have to imagine, this is like Odyssey Airport.
Yeah, tiny airport, small plane.
Tiny airport, small plane. It's just getting him to Chicago.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but still, right? Of course, it's heightened.
Mm-hmm. No, but it's good and it's tough. And then
Yep.
Eugene gets immediately taken by the security guards.
Yep. Yeah, who refer to him as a fruitcake.
Amen. That was my nickname in high school.
And yeah, Tom ends up knowing the security guard who's like got him cuffed and is walking because he like used to go to the farm growing up, and so like Bernard and Tom smooth talk this guy while telling Eugene to shut up.
Yes, really great. No, Tom does all the smooth talking. Bernard tells Eugene to shut up.
Fair.
And it's great. No, yeah, it's a really funny. I mean, it's a small town moment where it's like, oh yeah, of course I know your family, and Tom being old person. It's convenient. Bernard says that it's diplomacy. I don't think that that's diplomacy. Maybe it is, but yeah, I don't know. It seemed kind of like evading the law more than diplomacy.
Yeah, and so we have we then Jack shows up. Mm-hmm. So he overhears,
looking for Whit.
Right, he overhears Odyssey. He's like, I'm coming to see an old friend who wrote to me, said I should visit. And they're like, well, he just left. And Jack's like, oh, well, I guess I'll fly back to Chicago. And they're like, no, like,
don't
come stay. Like, let's honor his memory or whatever. And oh man, I love Jack. Yeah. Just like hearing his voice, I was like, man, what a guy.
Do you want to know my note where he enters? It's all caps and it says, enter Jack the Champion, Allen, the kindest voice to touch ears.
Mine just says Jack with 3 exclamation points.
That's fair. That seems a lot more reasonable.
And then so he comes back to Odyssey.
Or he comes back to Wit's End.
He comes back to Wit's End.
Using the cut of Wit's farewell speech, which I thought was a flashback. So in my notes, I'm like, cut to Wit's farewell speech at City Hall, video being played at Wit's End.
Yep. Yeah, so Connie plays the video of Wit speaking to Odyssey High, just thanking them for the cards.
Which, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's gutting. Do you know why it's gutting, Andrew?
Why is it gutting, Dylan?
That audio is Hal Smith himself.
I thought he didn't sound like Wit.
He made a video thanking Focus on the Family's team for sending him cards following his wife's death. And they used that audio as like his
thanking the town of Odyssey. Wow. I know this is an audio medium, but I really just feel like I need to sit in silence with that fact. That's just brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was had no clue where that came from when I listened to it. I was like, that had to be canned. It seems so specific.
Yeah. Dave Arnold, Paul McCusker, whoever came up with that idea, it is just kind of it's
perfect.
Remarkable. Like we talked about previously Wit's actual final lines on the show and how absolutely perfect those are. Like the last ones Hal Smith recorded for the It Began with a Rabbit's Foot episode, how good that is as like his final episode. But having the last say be something that
literally he's not being Wit. Like that audio is just Hal Smith.
That is just Hal Smith.
Yeah.
It's a tribute to the man, and that is him in being
sincere,
genuinely emotional.
Yeah.
That's not a performance.
Yeah.
Like, and it's
remarkable that neither of us cried during this, because talking about it, I'm like getting choked up.
Yeah, I mean that scene nearly got me again.
Yeah.
And Eugene starts crying.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh man, is this gonna be it? Like, but I'm like, no, I kept it together. And then we have the letter from Eugene gets home and reads a letter from Wit that Wit wrote. That is just. Dear
brutal.
Eugene, I'm so sorry I missed you. We've been trying to find you, but I'm afraid we won't be able to before I leave. There's a lot that I could say, but time has suddenly become very short. So rather than embarrassing you by saying how much I've come to love you and how I will pray for you every day, I'd just like to leave you with one simple thought. And then Will Ryan and John Avery Whitaker and Hal Smith in unison say the best is yet to come.
Just, man, RKO. Like, I've been in a boxing match with my emotions this whole episode, and they just got me.
And
I'm
folks,
down.
I did cry at that moment.
Oh boy, wow.
I had been teetering for the back half of this episode, and the mechanics of that being like, oh, of course, like we're gonna have Will Ryan read this, and that's like he gets to speak the last words of Hal Smith, and then it's like, no, they pulled audio and got to have Hal say it at the end, and it's just
over top.
It's so good. It's just the perfect conclusion to this episode. It's also. It's timely that we're covering this episode when we are, because the announcement was just made that album 75 is the next album that's coming out, is going to be the one that reckons with what they're doing with Eugene. What's going to happen now that I almost said Will Smith.
If only. I'll trade that.
What they're going to do now that Will Ryan has passed.
I'm afraid.
I was gonna say I'm really uneasy about it, especially because of the just like over, like literally in the time since he has passed, the ability to do freaking AI voices has like grown exponentially.
Yeah.
And the fact that like we did the whole freaking what was the Kenobi, where all of James Earl Jones' voices with his consent were just audio AI generated. And I'm just like, if we get AI characters, this is going to be a bummer.
No, that'll just be done. I would just disown it. I'll stop the podcast.
And additionally, Bernard is on the cover art.
Oh?
Which Dave Madden has been long since passed.
Done, been, gone. Like,
so I am...
He died before Tom did, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I believe so. I believe he passed before Walker Evans. But yeah, he is... I'm just like, I am so on edge with how they are going to handle this, given... Because this one, I don't know. It's weird. The reusing of audio, even audio that wasn't intended for the show, feels like a loving tribute.
Yeah.
The like recreating the person as a computer feels hellish.
No, it's exactly.
And I don't know what that is. And maybe it's just something we'll grow to become used to in this freaking world.
No, I think that it's the lack of humanity in it, and the lack of, like, you cannot, re-engineer a human in their behaviors, mannerisms, and cognitions with it. It's a sterilized version. You can get it to say the same words and sound pretty similar, actually very, very close.
Right.
But it
right, and they could get
it's
an
always going to be fake gold,
and honestly, getting an impersonator would also have the same kind of issue.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
me.
Yeah,
like one of the things that Odyssey has done well is the wits sound similar, but they all have their own flavor, and they're able to do that because they have a break every time. Because there is a gap between albums 50 and 51.
Yeah.
Because there is this period where Wit's not even a part of the show. They can make that transition work in a way that, like, if you're trying to butt something right up against, the recasting gets weird. And they
hell is Bernard doing on the cover art?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just fun. But, like, yeah, it is.
I don't think so.
No. I'm just very interested to see how they handle it, and also terrified by this idea that I can't get out of my head. Also because I don't know if you're currently taking a break from Instagram, but the Adventures in Odyssey Instagram, which I don't follow, but they follow me, so I see their stuff. Actually, I think the podcast does follow them, but regardless, they have been posting a lot of AI generated images of like Odyssey as like Norman Rockwell paintings and stuff, to where I'm just like, they're already dabbling, like they've already bought into this. Oh no.
Yeah.
Like, is this going to be the route? Maybe Will Ryan will continue on the show for the next 20 years. God, I'm just like,
they bring back Hal Smith.
Right. Like, they do an episode where all three wits meet
across the Wittyverse.
Yes. No, actually, someone did do a pitch of that on the fan page and on Facebook, and unsurprisingly, Phil Lawler was in the comments being
I remember.
grumpy.
Yep. Yeah, he was like, "Oh, there's no multiverse." Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah.
As long as we keep Phil Lawler away from Eugene and Bernard, if he gets his grubby little mitts on it and ruins it,
I'm scared.
Send him a really angry message on Facebook.
Yeah. I'm scared, but I will say, like, respect to this episode, done extremely well.
Yeah.
And
for their first digitally recorded episode, on top of all of this,
or digitally edited.
Sorry, but still.
Yeah, it really works. And this episode makes me give the last 6 a bit of a pass. Where I'm like, if for 8 months all of their creative energy was going into how do we do this, and I don't think they could have done it better.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know that there's a version of this episode that would work better than this one.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it really works. And so I think had they the amount of work it took to make this episode this good makes me totally fine that the last few have been lackluster.
Fillery. Yeah.
Because I'm just like, Phil. But like it's worth it. Like that trade-off is worth it. I would rather have a few episodes I don't super care for and one that's great than them like kind of not stick the landing on this one.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Well, and it does feel natural, like you said, with the whole tying it together to Eugene's trip and everything that they were doing. Like it does feel very cyclical in a natural kind of devastating way. Yeah. I don't know. I do really appreciate it. And then we did gloss over Eugene's moment with Connie after the video, and Eugene like Connie comes to check on him and like gives him a hug, and it's like you can tell it's like a prolonged hug, and they have Eugene says Connie says it'll be okay, and Eugene says it'll have to be. Mr. Whitaker, and he says through tears, wouldn't have left if he didn't have every confidence that we would be able to cope.
Yeah.
And that was brutal. That was really tough, but it was also just so good because like the Foley work was incredible. You could it felt like I was watching two people hug and talk to each other in a way that was so hard to convey in audio.
Yeah. No, that is a good moment, and I'm glad you drew attention to it.
My last note, I will say, the outro. Very mournful, different music.
Correct. We don't have the standard outro music. Chris is striking an entirely different tone. It is very much, it's very somber. And this episode, I don't know that it still does, but had a warning on it when it aired originally.
Really?
The warning was, this is a highly emotional episode. It may raise several questions about why Whit had to leave. This episode could be used as an opportunity to talk about death with your child.
Yeah, no, that's fair. One, if you think about, so on the wiki, the scripture is 1 Corinthians 15, 51 to 52, which I actually read fairly recently for school. Listen, I tell you a mystery, we will not all sleep, but we will all be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. And that's just beautiful.
Yeah, that's a really good note to end on. So skipping past plugs, because whatever, we'll be here in a week.
Plug Housemith.
The episode that we are covering next is episode 281. It's called But Not Forgotten.
Bye, guys.
Bye.